So good morning, gardeners. Today we're going to be doing back to basics, and we're going to be doing some potting on and some potting up of some of our seedlings, and we're going to be doing a selection of Ichmeas. These are Ichmea Blush F2s, and they were originally planted back in February of 2020. So it's now February 2022. So these are 2-year-old little babies that we're going to be potting up. We're also going to pot up some bilberges, and the bilberges were a night skies hybrid, and these ones were planted back in October as seeds in 2019. So they're a little bit older again, and these are some again. Now, out of these Grecs that are here, I'll select only a couple from this section and 2 from this section, and the rest of those will then be fed to the goats. I'm also going to be planting up, because with our tropical plants that we've got in our gardens, there's a large selection of other types of seedlings as well. So these are quarterline seedlings that were planted from seed about 2 years ago. There's also some philodendron. This one is Pink Princess, and it's been in a bucket of water for several weeks, and its stalk has now produced these itty bitty little buggers. So they're going to be planted out as well. So the mix that I use when I do my seedlings is a bit different to my seed raising. When I do seed raising, I use the peat, and I use a bit of the vermiculite and a little bit of the perlite, and some vermiculite. I also, with the seedlings, add the propagation sand as well. And so that just encourages further root growth, especially when you're doing some of the more tropical plants. So the exact products that I use, and anyone can use a different selection, I use the Pine Grow hydroponic premium mix. It's already pre-soaked and ready to go. It contains nutrients to feed the seedlings as well. I also use, like I said, the very fine vermiculite and the very fine perlite. Another thing I also use are these coir blocks, and I use these when I'm doing the seedling pups. So this then gets soaked in a bucket, which turns into a wheelbarrow full, and that gets mixed in with my mix that I use when I'm doing pups, etc. Now, the mix I use with my pups is different again. So for pups or for plants, I use what's called a combination mix that I get mixed up at my local garden centre, and a soil and gravel mix place. And this is 50% pine fines, which are these itty bitty little ones, and a product called a composted bark. So it's broken down already, and that mixes a 50-50. Now to that, I also then get them to add just 1/3 of coarse sand, and then this mix I then pop aside in a different potting area by quantity, several metres of it, and I let it sit for several months, and it breaks down. So this is what would happen in a pot anyway. It breaks down over time. So it's still a very friable mix. It's a very loose mix because of the bark. And this is great for your pups and your larger plants, but not for your smaller plants. Your smaller plants is this mix that I use here. So I'm just going to mix all this together, and then we'll start the process. Now, a selection of pots. So seedlings, etc., the little tiny ones, they go into my little 50 ml squats. After a year or so, they'll move up into 100 ml squat or 110 squat. This is the 110 squat, and it's a bromeliad pot, so it contains lots and lots of holes instead of just your 4 or so holes around the outside. So I always make sure I get bromeliad pots. The other pots that I use for pups, etc., as they get larger, are your 165s or your big 180s, and then 200. So that's the selection of pots that I use. These big giant terracotta 450 ml ones, those ones are for communities. And then with seedlings, when they first have developed, go into these seed trays, and these trays are 5 centimetres square, and there are 10 in each tray. All right, so that's my little potting area and my little potting section. So let's start the process. So firstly, we need to mix all this together. So with gloves I use when doing this and mix it all together. Okay, so what I've done is the mix has all been made and mixed together pretty evenly. I've filled all my pots up, the ones that I'm using, which is the 50ml little squat ones, and I do them all back in the same container so I don't make a mess, and that way I can actually do this inside when I'm not working outside. Alright, so what we do, pretty simply, I will just using my finger pop a little hole in the centre of this pot, about finger depth, just like so. These are the plugs, these are the little Eekmia seedlings that I've already taken out of their little trays, and so they're ready to go. Trying not to disturb the roots too much, into the little hole they will go. Press down, and then all the potting mix just around them, just to secure them back into that pot, just like so. And job done for those little guys. Over to the main tray. Tags are important. Make sure each individual plant has a tag in it instead of just the whole tray, because it's easy as the plants grow for plants to get moved around, and then you get confused as to what it is that you've got growing. Pretty simple. Now, as far as the other types of plants go, like I said, this is a philodendron, itty bitty baby, and it's going to be treated exactly the same way. It's going to go into the same mix that I've already prepared, just the same, making sure that I don't plant them too deeply, like so. Now these ones will go into a tray, and the tray will have water in the base to keep them nice and moist, because philodendrons love to be kept moist. And they'll go into another area of the garden. That's a cute little pink princess, that one's done. And same story with the cordyline. Now the cordyline I'm going to do in community pots, because some of them are still quite small, some of them are a good size. They'll go into a different size pot. No extra fertilisers needed at this stage for any of these. Like I said, these are a couple of years old now. When they were first planted in the cocoa fibre, it contained enough nutrients to get them going initially, and now they're back in another fresh mix of the cocoa peat again. That is the seed raising mix. It contains nutrients to continue to keep them well fed for the next few months. Predation at the moment, the main problem is need to be aware of things like rats, moths and caterpillars. A lot of butterflies around at the moment, and you will find certain little bugs do love to eat the young plants, so making sure that they're in an area where they're protected. Rats are notorious for getting in and eating baby seedlings, which is what's happened to a large amount of these particular blush, for example. They ate probably 50% in the greenhouse, which is fine when I had so many, and I didn't really want that many. These were just a test to see how successful the seed was going to be before it was released originally on the seed bank that we had functioning at one point. It's not currently functioning. So yeah, raising your seedlings takes a little bit of time, a little bit of work. Once you get to this point, they can stay in this pot for at least another 12 months. Simple. That's how we go about growing from seed and propping on. Thanks very much for viewing. Bye now.